Welcome to this episode of Disrupt Education. I got Dr. Lynn Kepp here. Lynn, thank you so much for hanging out with us on Disrupt Education.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and have this conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's start off with a little bit about you. Who are you and what roles do you play around education?
I am a teacher. I started my career as a high school science teacher and continued my career focused on teaching teachers and have dedicated my life to doing that, both from my education studies, my work in education nonprofits, and right now I work at Avid as a vice president of learning products, programs, and services, where I have the great privilege of leading a fabulous team thinking about how we develop professional learning and services and resources for educators. So that's my passion. And for those people that aren't familiar with Avid Center, we are a national nonprofit where we support educators to spark and support thriving learning cultures that prepare students for a future of possibility. We work at a national scale in about 7,500 schools. We support the development of over 85,000 educators annually, and we impact more than 2 million students a year.
I can't wait to jump into that. Obviously, with the pandemic and the very fast changing paces of education and the different things going on. But before that, I have to ask,
Yeah.
Lynn Kepp as a student, talk us through maybe your learning journey, and you can go as far back as you want, all the way through your PhD. What kind of student were you like in maybe middle school and high school and then beyond?
So I have an interesting learning journey in terms of it. When I was in elementary school, I moved quite frequently, almost every other year. So I'm one of those students who would have benefited from a standard curriculum across the country as I moved from Indiana to New Jersey to California and back and forth. So I did a lot of movement and ended up in California. I'm an LAUSD graduate for high school. And I was actually a very good student. I was very successful. I'm very good at school. I liked it and really, really, really enjoyed it. And I think that's one of the things that led me into teaching. But I recognized when I started teaching that my experience, what I thought was what I perceive as a typical learning experience, was not the same as my students. And so really, I think my biggest education came about when I started teaching in La Puente, California, with a student population that was different than my peer group, and realized that not everyone learns the same. And what was successful for me wasn't successful for all students. And it took me a little bit to learn that. And so when I think about my learning journey, that then prompted me to think about, wow, how can I help? Because in my school, there were some teachers who really worked very hard to support the development of all. And then there were others who did not. And, struggled with, why are you teaching if you're not really seeming to be happy to be here? You're not really caring about kids, you care about the content. And so that propelled me through my continual educational journey around developing teachers and focusing on teacher development, to think about how, because I think teachers are the most impactful people and can be on a student's lives. They also can limit the possibilities that those students see themselves. So I'm always thinking about, how can we help teachers really turn on what's possible and ignite that spark in students? And so, my education then continued to be this continual quest, from working with student teachers, running graduate programs of education, working with new teachers, and working at Avid. So that has been because again, my experience in K-12 was really pretty sheltered. And so that kind of has led me to where I am today.
You found your why kind of through your experiences, which is really cool. I think a lot of teachers do that. We go into our different paths, but it is amazing why some teachers will, unfortunately, just love their curriculum so much and not connect. But it's great that you saw a need there and jump into that. We're in this unbelievable time in education. I never thought in my entire career that things like this would happen. It's interesting, it's good, it's change, it's difficult. And so now some of the things that I know you have studied and seen beforehand in your career have surfaced in front of many. So I kind of wanted to pivot into, Avid talk a little bit about how it's changing and working with educators, because we're burning out. There's a lot of different needs going on. I've known your organization pre-pandemic, and it's like, yes. So that's my little cheerleader moment. But what I wanted to give you an opportunity here, just to kind of talk us through that journey. March 13th hit 2020. You were doing a lot of things already. How has it changed, or maybe even stayed the same? Or what are the different things that you have seen happen throughout the last almost 2 years now?
There's been a lot. It's interesting. We're coming upon the 2-year journey. And what I have to think about, what excites me the most about Avid and both pre-pandemic and post, is I think that what we focus on is helping teachers. Like, I don't believe any teacher goes into teaching just because I need a job and I'm working 9 months. That is not the job. It never goes away. Your kids are with you all the time. It's people may think that from the outside, those of us that have done it and do it, that is not the job. I believe that the difference between teachers who have different attitudes is that they simply don't necessarily know how to have the learning strategy. They don't know how to teach their students learning strategies to be successful. And what I think Avid does is twofold. We teach the learning strategies, but we also build the relationship between the students and between the educators. And what I think happened in the pandemic was the relationships and the isolation for many teachers and students of being forced to work from home was very, very difficult. It was very difficult to build those relationships, to maintain that connection, to teach to a black screen if students don't have their cameras turned on, and build those relationships between students. It is very hard. And the biggest thing we're seeing is educators themselves didn't have the opportunity to be in community and work together collectively. And so one of the exciting things is, we went from huge professional learning events in person in the summer to doing it virtually. But we made a commitment that we were not going to try to take summer, what we did face-to-face, and replicate that. We were going to look at how can we use the power of technology and the tools that teachers may be using in their classrooms and make it a very interactive, relational, capacity-based activity. It propelled our professional learning to new levels. It was very hard to do in the time frame we had, but we had excellent experiences to the point where we are not going back. This summer, we are having professional learning for teachers and educators, and we are in day 5. Well, we're 1 week from our registration opening, and we're already at 18,000 people are coming. A combination of in-person and online. So we are not, and even in our in-person professional learning, we're infusing strategies to engage, because the technology did allow us to tap into some people who needed more processing time or weren't necessarily as verbal. So there were some benefits. So when I think about this 2 years, I think about, we all recognize the importance of relationships. We recognize the importance of the teacher, and we recognize that we need to be in community with each other and be supported. So how can we do that both in the classroom, in the school site, with our leaders? How do we help build that thriving learning culture? That's been super important. And that has just amplified throughout this pandemic, and something that we're going to continue to focus on into the future.
When teachers and administrators are coming to you for the first time, and you've had some first ones coming through in these 2 years, what are the majority of them kind of seeking out? And obviously you're providing a lot of services, but what are the main pieces that people are saying, this is something that we really need, and they're diving deep into, and they need like Avid to help them out with?
What they're really thinking about is The other thing the pandemic highlighted is we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And we don't even know we already have this pathway where we couldn't predict what jobs are going to be out there in 30 years. Now it seems like the pandemic has made people be even more, I don't even know what's possible tomorrow. So thinking about, well, we can't predict the careers where our students are going to have. How can we prepare them for today with skills that will lead them to tomorrow? So we do a lot of work around these learning strategies, around helping students learn to learn. We call it rigor, but writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and critical reading. And our educators, whether they're content educators from science and math, or people think about academic literacy as a big focus right now, as we know students have learning gaps from this pandemic, one of the biggest ways to help close those gaps is helping students know how to learn. Can I identify a point of confusion? Can I take ownership and agency with my learning? And so we believe, and that's where educators are coming to us, build those communities, help us develop those skills where students can set goals and clarify their points of confusion and take not more ownership, but really understand how to move their learning journey along in collaboration with their educators. So that's what we've been doing, as well as a lot of work with school leaders around how do they support and sustain these cultures and these learning cultures for their educators that are then influencing their classroom.
Yeah, that's got to be that's the other forgotten burnout, unfortunately, right? When you're talking about administrators and school leaders and the pinches that are coming on to them, how do you help them actually make those those connections, and what are some of the strategies and workshops that you provide for that?
So we actually help leaders in a bunch of different ways around leading change for educational equity or for equity, in terms of thinking about how do we focus on instruction, systems, leadership, and culture. Those are the 4 domains. And so depending on where the leader is, and right now there hasn't been a lot of time to focus on instruction. It's been a lot of focus on systems, and systems that aren't necessarily even, the systems that educators want to focus on. But so we work with them to think about how are their systems set up to really open opportunities for students? Do they have unintended structures and rules that actually gatekeep students out of things? How are they thinking about their culture? So they're all interwoven, but helping those leaders think about those systems, and again, networking with other leaders and building that. We actually have a new term called collective educator agency, where we believe a leader can help and the educators will take intentional actions based upon common beliefs. So if I'm a leader and I'm working with my educators to think about, we believe, there's a life of possibility for these students, and we are going to do these things because we believe that. We're going to expose them to opportunities that they didn't know about for post-secondary. We're going to make sure that they are prepared for the most rigorous academic preparation. We're going to help build their agency and skills. When those educators collectively do that, and the leader with the leader, we believe that's hugely powerful. So we're working with leaders to think about how do they build collective educator agency.
That's a great term. I've never heard of that. So
we came up with it. It's ours.
Yeah, there we go. Get an NFT on that. Something else that I've been seeing a lot, especially in secondary education, as students are completing their K through 12 journey, are a lot of these profiles or pillars of a graduate. What kind of things have you seen in that area? Because obviously we do have the grades, we do have GPAs and test scores. I know your organization has known this for years, that doesn't tell the whole student. Obviously, you're building skill sets and these future ready workers. What kind of things have you seen in that area, and how is that changing, especially in the last 3 to 5 years?
I like when I've seen some of the portraits of a graduate are really thinking about, and this is where we're debating on what do you call it, right? Is it future ready skills? Is it soft skills? Is it durable skills? Is it, but it's the idea that when you look at data around what helps people be prepared for, and it takes them through school and life and work, it's again around, can I problem solve? Can I set goals? Do I know how to collaborate? Do I know how to inquire? Do I know how to work with other people? Do I know how to critically read And do I know how to write? And we know from talking to our alumni, we've been doing this for 40 years, and we have alumni who will tell us stories of not only did they use these skills, these learning strategies in college, or even if they don't go to college, we have an alumni we recently met who uses them to develop his own employees. So we think of these things almost like what we're calling a possibility index. Like if I know what opportunities are available and I have agency and think I can take actions because I believe that, and I am prepared, I'm going to have a high index of possibility. And then I'm going to develop and help develop that possibility in others. So I'm excited for the portraits of a graduate. And I think we need to really think intentionally around, it's not just 30 minutes a day of, future ready skills. It's how in every classroom our teachers being consistent in the actions and the expectations and the supporting students to develop those. I think that's when you see stickiness and it makes a difference. And then students can be like, okay, I'm in a new job, I'm in a new place. I know how to do this. It's going to be hard, but I can handle this. I'm going to set some goals, set some plans, work with others, ask for help, and move on. So that's what we're hopeful for.
Yeah, I am excited about it as well. I think it's a step in the right direction. I definitely know there's some transitional thinking. And again, that's why I brought it up, because your organization has been doing this. So I keep saying that because it's true. And it's an interesting transition for a lot of school leaders, school boards, communities to really start to see things this way. One of the things that, we're multi-generational in education systems, so It's very interesting. And I like how you framed it up as educators learning with their students and not against or for them. It's a collaborative effort, if you will. What would you like to see in the next year to 3 years in education happen?
I would like to see educators given the opportunity and the space, and this is all levels, from principals, superintendents to classroom teachers, to actually be able to focus on the things that they love and they know that matter. So I'd like to wave a magic wand and have the pandemic be gone. I'd like to not have people have to worry about mask mandates, et cetera. I'd like to think about how can we take the things that we learned, the gaps that we witnessed, the inequities that existed that were highlighted by the pandemic, and how can we make our systems better? How can we have more students, again, see what's possible? How can our educators again, be energized and be in relationship and community with each other? So when I look towards the future, I would hope that there would be more educators working together in an aligned way to really help those students, again, be ready. Because again, we don't know exactly what. We don't know. And so are we preparing students when they're in elementary school to think about, there's going to be a lot of jobs available in STEM fields, but you don't see yourself as STEM because maybe you think of a STEM as like, if I don't want to be a scientist, that's it for me, right? So how are we helping to lay that path to shine spotlights on possibility for the students, but also for the educators, because everyone's tired. And so what can we do to help to energize, to spark, and to sustain them? Because this has been a very rough 2 years for so many people, professionally and personally. We need to have some care and love and time to find some more joy in what we do and go back to that original spark of joy that brought people into their why.
Well said. It's very difficult. We just finished out the teacher burnout month here on Disrupt Education, and organizations such as yours it's pretty amazing to really understand, to give everybody grace and room to work, and to be okay with, hey, guess what? We really don't know what's coming, but we're going to be prepared for it, which is amazing. I wanted to conclude here with, say somebody wanted to connect with the organization, and how can they find ways to become involved with Avid, and to check some things out, because you have a tremendous amount of value that not only, well, the educational community in general across the board can really benefit from. So how can people connect?
Certainly. So we have avid.org is a great website. We have lots of information, free resources, opportunities. We have free webinars. We have these things called showcases where we actually go in and see what's happening at schools and they highlight their practices. We've also have our summer professional learning, which is open and available both in person and online. So again, people can experience Avid in that way. When the pandemic started, we leaned in to helping educators in any way possible. And we actually started Avid Open Access, which is a website free of resources, lessons. We're partnering with all different types of STEM content to help put together and all different types of resources. And we continually update that regularly. So we have Avid Open Access, we have avid.org. And me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, email at Lynn Kepp. My name's a little bit unique, so I'm pretty easy to find. And so again, just really happy to engage with the community and wherever they are and whatever types of needs and resources they have. We're hoping that we can do something, particularly right now, to help make people's lives just have a little bit more joy and be a little bit easier is what our goal is right now.
Well, thank you so much for, number one, sharing your educational journey and your why, and also the amount of value that Avid brings, especially in times of need, and really understanding educators, because you are educators, which is wonderful. So thank you for taking the time out on Disrupt Education today.
Thank you for the conversation.
And for the listeners, thank you all so much for hanging out with us today. Until next time, we'll catch you on Disrupt Education.